Nepal.
Thank you.
First of all, how has been your experience been so far in Nepal?
Well, I'm very fortunate to have come to Nepal a number of times to meet with trade unions here, and it's always a really welcoming place to meet. It's one of the best places for trade unions to come, and some of our work has been really important building trade unions in Nepal, but some of it is also a place to meet other unions where they don't have the freedom in their own country.
How does it feel to finally have PSI Asia Pacific Regional Conference happening right here in Kathmandu?
Well, it's really exciting because this is the first time we'll ever have so many trade unions from the public services in Nepal. There'll be between 250 and 300 trade unionists from more than 20 countries, and they're all really looking forward to coming here, both to learn more about Nepal and also to learn from each other and build solidarity.
This is the first time such a major gathering, PSI, is being held in Nepal. Why now and why Nepal?
Okay.
What message does that send to the region?
All right, so why now? Every 5 years we hold this meeting, and it has to be it rotates around the region. Although this one took a bit longer because of COVID, so it's actually 6 years we had to delay. But and we chose Nepal because it is one of the best places, the safest places for trade unions. We're in a moment globally in Asia Pacific, but also around the world, even in highly developed countries where it's becoming more and more dangerous for trade unions. And Nepal is one of the very few places where trade unions can feel safe to meet, to discuss, and even to have rallies and to actually have demonstrations. Very few countries can we do that. Another big benefit is actually the visa issue. We can't have our Pakistan and Indian trade unions meeting in their countries, and here, fortunately, every country can meet, and we can barely find a country in the world where that's possible.
For those who may not be familiar, could you briefly explain what Public Service International PSI is and the kind of worker it represents globally?
Well, we are the global union federation for all workers who deliver public services. The federation is more than 100 years old. It was formed in early 1900s, and it brings together workers who deliver all the essential services we need for a good life, and that's health. Here in Nepal we also have the community health workers, although they're called community health volunteers. We include the sanitation workers, the electricity, energy workers, water, local government, local municipal workers, public administration workers as well. So any workers that are required for us to have a prosperous life and to live well, they're public service workers. We represent more than 30 million workers who are affiliated to PSI, and some of them are huge unions. So when we meet here, one of our Japanese unions has more than 500,000 members, and some of them are very small and new, like in the Maldives. They've only just been allowed to form unions for the first time in the last few years. So we'll bring together those huge unions and the small ones from across public services.
As you said also earlier, this year conference brings together more than 250 delegates from over 20 countries. What are the major issues on the table, and what outcomes are you hoping for?
Well, because of the global situation, one of the major issues is actually how do we fight back against the threats. So the theme is actually going to be about fight back in the face of all of the global threats, from the growing influence of billionaires and corporations who want to privatise our public services in many countries, you know, in all around the world and in this region, there's a growing gap between the rich and poor, and part of that is because of privatisation and people can't access the services they need. So that will be one of the topics. Another topic is the fact that many public service unions cannot operate, they can't strike, they can't bargain. So it's the how do we build the capacity for public service unions. And we are also concerned about the quality of public services. So we're concerned about workers, but also about the public and what they need. So we're also talking about how the government needs more money to invest in public services. That means stopping the International Monetary Fund and the World Bank from putting on austerity measures, and also taxing corporations, taxing the rich, so the government has the funds they need to pay community health workers, for example, or to expand public health. Another topic that I think is really important for Nepal actually is migration. How many people are migrating out of countries and the conditions they have to work in. We think that Nepal needs workers here, skilled workers, health workers, to stay here for a good health system. But we also are concerned when they migrate, they should be treated properly and get all the conditions and decent work that workers are entitled to. So we will also have that conversation between unions in countries. How can we support workers in their countries and when they migrate?
You said that privatization continues to threaten public service globally.
Yes.
What is your take on how institutions like World Bank and IMF are increasing in the global south, including Nepal?
Yes. I mean, this is one of the big concerns we have, that they represent the countries that provide the money.
Yeah.
They don't represent the countries that need support. And we really think these global institutions need to be reformed. In the interests of the global south, they have to stop pushing old ideas of austerity, privatisation in the interests of foreign corporations. It's not even in the interest of local business.
Yeah.
And so we do want to galvanise global support to stop those institutions from continuing with that method. There are other ways. There's more money in the world than ever, actually, if we taxed properly.
Yeah.
These global corporations are getting away with using tax havens. There's trillions of dollars in offshore tax havens. What we need to do is release that money and have it where it's needed so that we can build public services in the global south. And we need a lot of countries in the global south to get together and agree on that. We are also inviting, for example, the acting finance minister from Bangladesh. He's done some work for PSI in the past because he's a very prominent economist on this area, on how to reform the IMF and the World Bank, because they also face austerity. So we want that conversation between countries, that how can they have common interests to improve the global financial system.
Yeah, in this conference, geopolitical threats to public services and union are a part of the conversation. Can you unpack what those threats and how they are affecting workers on the ground?
Well, we know that a clear threat is the US, right? And even there, I mean, workers are so under threat in the US, and the unions are under threat. And I know everybody here is experiencing that. And in Nepal, for example, the cancellation of USAID is one concrete example. So even though this is an Asia Pacific conference, we are asking one of the big US unions to come and talk about how they're fighting back and how we can work together on some of those issues. Because whether it be in the global south or the global north, we've got a rise of authoritarian governments who see public service unions as a big threat to their power, because they're representing billionaires. They don't want unions, right? So we have to talk about how we collaborate more globally. We've never had something like globally coordinated strike action. Maybe in the future we have to do that, because corporations can act globally. We as trade unions have to act globally. And we are supporting those unions who are currently under threat in the US, and they're fighting back. They're taking legal cases, they're taking industrial action, they're going to the street, and they've had some wins, but we need to act together, and that's part of what we will discuss here.
Next question. How does PSI view the current state of labour rights and trade union freedom in South Asia, and how does Nepal compare within that landscape?
Well, there's pros and cons in South Asia, isn't there? There's a number of countries where it's extremely dangerous to be part of trade unions. I mean, in India has really reduced the entitlements of trade unions, although they've had a national strike recently, which was quite a success. People were detained, but they've been released. In Pakistan, there's grave threats to trade unions, where especially those fighting back against privatisation, and there are provinces there where they've cancelled all the registration in Balochistan of unions. So part of South Asia is going backwards. But here in Nepal, obviously the situation is different, where trade unions can operate, and we actually are hopeful, especially with organising some of the informal sector. That's a great progress here, where there's more unionising in the informal sector. We're working in sanitation, community health workers at the local, provincial level, and that's going forward positively. I see the tripartite meeting happened on the minimum wage, so there's a lot of collaboration and positivity. There's also positive developments in Sri Lanka and Bangladesh and Maldives. So part of South Asia is improving just in the last year or so, and part of it is facing really significant threat.
Yeah, PSI has a strong base in Nepal through its affiliation. What are some of the key labor challenges you see here, especially in sectors like health, sanitation and local government?
Well, that's right. We've got 7 affiliates here, and some of them are able to operate very well. I think some of the threats, though, are similar in that if you don't fund public services, then they don't have enough work. You know, there are less and less workers. There are not enough, for example, nurses in the hospital. When I go into the hospital, I see how few nurses there are, and there are people leaving those jobs. And the unions here told me that they can recruit members, but then those members leave. You know, a few months later, a sanitation worker might join the union, but it's not a secure job. They're on a daily wage. So the next month they're going and working as a driver instead of sanitation. So it's very hard to organise if your job is not secure. So I think the sanitation workers, we would like to see them regularised as permanent employees with secure jobs. And with the community health workers, we would like to see them recognised as the workers they are, entitled to a wage. And all the workers, of course, we see some progress with the social protection, with being registered, but we need more security of work, and that will enable the trade unions to become also more secure.
Are you pushing for them formally recognized and paid for them?
For the community health workers, yes. And it's a surprise that actually that happened in Pakistan. It is possible, because this same system of relying on women as volunteers to deliver the primary health system, what happened in Pakistan, in India and in Nepal. And in Pakistan they have actually become regular employees, and they get a wage. And I think if they can do it, it can be done here, because the situation is better here. So those women are really delivering really critical health. The country has improved a lot because of them. You know, the reduction in maternal mortality and child mortality is partly a result of their work, and they should be entitled to a wage. Everyone would be entitled to a wage, right? And if they were men, they probably get a wage, but because it's women delivering care, they're not entitled to a wage. So I really hope, I know that we've had some very positive meetings, both at the national level and also at some provincial level, and we really hope that those positive responses from government will translate into a concrete commitment.
As we talked earlier also, the sanitation workers has often worked on hazardous, unpaid, poor decent work conditions. How can PSI, together with local unions, push for real change on the ground for these essential workers?
Yeah. So that's a part of the work we're again doing on all South Asia, and we're trying to help them organise and have a voice for on their own demands. And one of the key demands they talk about is to be regularised. So they've got secure work, not outsourced. There seems to be so many different businesses here. That's one of our problems in sanitation. So many different employers, not one employer to bargain with. So we would prefer to see these as public sector workers employed by the local municipality through a collective agreement with the municipality, but they must be entitled to regular wages. And it's an essential service. We all know that we can't live without sanitation workers, so we need to appreciate their work as well. I should say that this work, when I look at their work, they also talk about protective equipment. Some of them have to buy their own if the gloves break or if they don't have enough protective equipment. It is dangerous work, but when I go to Bangladesh, they have no protective equipment. So there's an improved, better standard here, but it still needs to improve more.
Let's talk about AI and digitalization are changing how services are delivered.
Yes.
How should unions and workers prepare for this shift, especially in public services?
This is an area we're doing quite a bit of work on, and of course we think AI needs more regulation, and the governments need to work with trade unions in all sectors, including the creative sectors, the culture sectors, because in health sector as well. I mean, we care both about the workers and about the data. We don't want our public health data being taken by private sector, multinational, foreign companies and commercialised. So we are doing a lot of work both in bargaining, how unions can bargain for better provisions, but also how governments need to regulate. And we think we could have AI for public good, but right now AI is for profit. And governments should be thinking about how can we even license data? How could we make sure that because data is very valuable, how can we make sure that that's taxed properly and licensed properly so that especially countries like Nepal who don't have big tech in their country, that they need to be able to regulate how much of that data is being taken away to other countries and profited. So we are doing a lot of work with affiliates on that. We will have that topic at our conference, and we want to also work with governments there's a lot of interest for them to improve global data regulation and also local regulation.
Yeah, as you talked earlier also, worker migration is growing concern, particularly for countries like Nepal. How is PSI addressing the brain drain and ensuring fair treatment of migrant health professionals?
So it's a really important question for the country, I think, because Nepal has been PSI represents workers at the World Health Organization, and Nepal has been put on a list for the World Health Organization that it doesn't have sufficient health workers in its own health system. So it should not really be pursuing a lot of health migration. It should focus on how you can improve your own system. But it could be possible to have an agreement with another country about how that country both benefits from some migrant workers but improves the system in the country. We were able to be part of one of those agreements between the Philippines and Germany, for example, where they involved trade unions in the Philippines and Germany, both PSI affiliates, to negotiate. So how can the other country invest so you've got more education of health workers? How can you make sure that you're not taking health workers who are in your public system but maybe graduate workers or something who would like an experience overseas and then come back here with some experience? Unfortunately, Nepal hasn't involved trade unions in the negotiations for its bilateral labour agreements for health, and that's what we would like them to do. Is they can benefit from our experience where we've got better examples. The Philippines does involve PSI and our affiliates in their negotiations, and they get better outcomes. So that's what we would like to see here.
Yeah. What are some inspiring examples you have seen where inclusive union organization has made real differences, especially for women and marginalized groups?
Right. I am also a feminist. I really believe that trade unions are the best way to achieve gender equality. And that's partly why in my life I know I've benefited a lot from having a strong trade union movement in Australia. I wouldn't have an education if it wasn't for the trade union movement. And so I really believe that we can make a big difference, and some examples are that we've seen big pay rises in those sectors that are dominated by women where they're highly unionised. So as I mentioned, you know, where we were able to unionise a lot of the workers in Nepal, women, all 100% women led, were able to get their wages. And what we found is the next generation, their daughters for the first time went to high school. Before they got full-time wages, they were leaving young, and now many of their daughters are even going to university. So there's an intergenerational benefit when women lead their own unions, secure wages, and are able to actually have money for their own livelihoods. And mainly that's been in the health and also the care sector, you know, in home care and so forth. It's been really improving women's lives, and I think there's a lot more we can do in that field. You know, there's a far way to go, but the evidence is there.
Yeah, I want to learn more about this. I have a question. Okay. You have spent more than 2 decades in the heart of labor, feminism, and rights movement. What have been some of the biggest lessons from that journey?
Okay, good question. Yeah. Well, my mother was a domestic worker, and she was a very smart woman who when she was working in the public service, the policy was women had to leave when they got married. Yeah. And I also left school young, and I saw a lot of injustice and sexual harassment and things in work. And I wanted to challenge a lot about the way women were treated at work. And I thought the best way to do that is probably through the union. At first the union was very male dominated. Yeah. But I decided to join and try and get other women to join. And that has been a turning point in my life, but also in the lives of many people in Australia, because our union movement was able to gain many things that I benefited from. I was able to go to university later because the union movement demanded free education. We have a free healthcare system only because the union movement demanded a free healthcare system. So I see I've benefited in that journey of where the trade union encouraged me to be a leader, and I see the difference between my life and my mother's life. And I really want to do that work with other women as well as men, and I want to work together in solidarity. Certainly this work benefits both men and women who are workers, and together I think our solidarity actually means men can have more time with their families. Men can also enjoy life more, where we both can share responsibilities, share leadership, and work in solidarity.
The conference will adopt a new regional action plan.
Yes.
What changes or action can we expect from PSI in the coming years, especially concerning public service delivery?
Okay. Well, to prepare for this conference and prepare our regional action plan, we asked all our unions what the issues they care about most are. Now, there are all the issues that we would expect: trade union rights, fighting privatisation, organising, gender equality. But the new issues they've raised are some of the you've raised as well, is digitalisation and AI. So we'll be doing more on that, but also climate change. So for the first time, a lot of our affiliates are saying they think we need to work more on the climate crisis, and that includes how governments prepare, especially for emergency service workers. A lot of the workers in public services have to deal with the crisis where then there's an emergency, but also they're working outside in the worst conditions. I mean, in South Asia, in some countries we're now seeing 50-degree days, and those workers, those sanitation workers, they're the ones that have to work outside. And so we're trying to look at what policies should we have in that climate crisis. For example, hot work, stop work. We have to start making these new types of laws where
in the morning hours.
Exactly. The changing hours. We'll have to think about what the climate crisis means for all these workers, the community health workers who have to walk village to village. The climate situation is a priority for us that we are going to include in this regional action plan. AI, digitalisation will be a key part of the action plan, and also we'll be looking at how to fight back with the growing trend of authoritarianism and global influence of billionaires, because even in 5 years, even during the pandemic, they've gained so much more wealth, and we've got to find new ways to challenge that.
Finally, what kind of legacy do you hope this Kathmandu conference will leave for Nepal, for PSI and public service across the Asia Pacific?
Well, I hope our leaders will all recognise the benefits of Nepal. I mean, it's a fairly new democracy, isn't it? It's a fairly new struggle. I think we'll have the president attend, who is somebody who has fought against authoritarianism in the past, and we can learn a lot from Nepal, because there were very serious threats here that we can learn from when movements have won. I also hope that the community health workers will have a big profile. We're going to ask many of them to attend, and they'll be part of the ceremony, and that will put them on the agenda for many of our unions. And in the long term, affiliates here will be co-hosting. One of them is a community health workers trade union who will co-host this conference. So for her it will be a moment to sort of elevate their own struggles. And I hope that also the people of Nepal will understand that global trade unions are here to support both the workers and the development of the country, and only to work in solidarity, never to work against. We're not here to work against the government or to undermine any of the national development priorities. We're here to work in solidarity and to foster that a shared future that our affiliates really support.
I think I have included most of the important questions. If you think this is a missed question, that's what I want to say.
No, I think you've done really well. You've given me an opportunity to talk about a lot of the work that we're doing, and really looking forward to seeing what you produce. Thank you.
Thank you.